Hello and welcome to the University of Lincoln's Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship webinar today. So I'd like to sort of welcome everybody, and those that are sort of joining us live, you'll get an opportunity to ask questions around the degree apprenticeship maybe later on, but most definitely sort of at the end of the session. Please drop your sort of comments and questions in the chat there, and we'll be able to sort of pick them up as we go along. And those that are actually sort of or joining us on catch up, then email us your questions. We'll put the email address across the screen throughout the actual information session itself. So just drop us an email and we'll be able to sort of come back to you with some responses on that basis. So without further ado, I'm just going to add our sort of presentation to the screen here. So this is what we're going to be sort of going through today. We're going to talk about in terms of what an apprenticeship is, going through the learning and delivery method. We'll sort of reflect on some of the successes that our apprentices have had throughout their time and post apprenticeship as well. We'll be able to look at the apprenticeship journey itself. We've got a guest with us who is a current apprentice at the moment, and his name's Michael Hoyle, and he'll be able to share his experiences in terms of how it was for him. And then, of course, we'll sort of go into the detail around the actual Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship itself, the experience, and, of course, the requirements, eligibility, and the next steps. And like I said, there'll be opportunity for questions and answers as well there. So I want to just introduce you to the team that are here today. So my colleagues, so I shall just pop them up on the screen. So first of all, we've got Karen and Andrew. Karen, do you want to sort of start off and introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Taz. Hi, everyone. So I'm Karen Burrows, and I am the academic lead for degree apprenticeships within the business department at the University of Lincoln.
Hello, I'm Andrew Williams, and I'm the programme leader for the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship at the University of Lincoln.
Perfect, that's great. So so I will come back to Karen and Andrew throughout the presentation there, but I'll just sort of move on for now. So who are we? The University of Lincoln, and specifically the Lincoln International Business School. So we're a top 30 university for student satisfaction, according to the Guardian University Guide there of 2023. We've have a lot of dealings with business, through in terms of business engagement, and our award, the Small Business Charter Award, actually reflects all the work that we do within our sort of business community and through our students as well, who sort of work on projects and startups with sort of business itself. And as you can see, we are sort of got accreditations, the CMI, the Chartered Institute of sort of Logistics and Transport, the CIM as well. And we're also underpinned by our Sustainable Development Goals and Prime. So that's quite a key area for the business school in terms of its sort of positioning in terms of sustainability and ethical, responsible management as well. So that's broadly who we are in that sense there. I'm going to bring on Karen now, who's going to be able to talk to you more about the apprenticeship in detail. So Karen, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'll disappear for now.
Thank you, Taz. So I'm going to do a little bit of information now on what it actually means to study on an apprenticeship program. So for this particular apprenticeship, an apprenticeship is a series of what we call knowledge, skills and behaviours that you will complete within the workplace, but also there is an off-the-job element to an apprenticeship, and that off-the-job element is the training of the knowledge, skills and behaviours that we would deliver at the university. So for this particular standard, so apprenticeships are referred to as different standards. This one is the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship. And it's aimed at those that are aspiring to be in a management role, already in a middle management role, or what we refer to as an accidental manager. And an accidental manager might mean that, you know, you've been promoted, or you're currently doing a team leader role, a supervisor role, but have not had any kind of formal training. So for this particular apprenticeship, you have to be already in the workplace. You have to already be employed. So you have to be employed in a role already, and you have to be employed throughout the time on the apprenticeship. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't move roles within the organisation. That doesn't mean you can't move from one employee to another, but the requirements are that you are employed throughout the apprenticeship. There's also something called Recruit to an Apprenticeship scheme, and some employers will work with us at the university to recruit to this scheme, to this particular apprenticeship, and we will work with them to ensure that we meet all the requirements and you're able to complete your apprenticeship successfully. Part of being on an apprenticeship means you will be given dedicated time for that off-the-job element, that time to study. And so you will be provided with time out of your working hours as part of your normal working hours to complete your off-the-job, your study, your training, if you like, of those knowledge, skills and behaviours with us at the university. And I think it's on the slides later, but just really briefly, that can either be in person, or we refer to it as a blended approach. It can be online, it can be live webinars online, or it can also be asynchronous and synchronous learning, which means that you will be given certain tasks to do, and then we'll discuss them at our next live session, our next webinar, or our next face-to-face session. Your knowledge, skills and behaviours are the things that you will develop during the programme. And so knowledge obviously are the things that you're going to gain, and everything is about then taking that knowledge that's gained and developing those skills in those areas, and then they're reflected in how you behave within that role within the workplace. And every single one of them are practically applied to your learning. So this particular program is really good because it can be made completely bespoke to you and you as an individual, and also to what your organization, or to what the organization requires for you to do within your role. So it's an individual learning plan, if you like, applied to you. So everything that you learn with us at the university can be applied practically throughout your role within the organisation. Can you move on the slides, Taz, please? So what's in this particular apprenticeship? And as I said to you, all apprenticeships are different, but this particular one that we deliver at the university is what we call the standard Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship. So you will gain an apprenticeship with that title. And we work very closely with the CMI for this one. So that's the Chartered Manager Institute, which is a well-recognised organisation for professional management skills across the United Kingdom. And we work with them in order to ensure that what you are learning is comparable across other programs that are very similar to this one, and also what organisations are looking for. You'll also have a degree element to this particular standard, and the degree part is called the Bachelor of Arts, the BA Honours, Professional Practice in Leadership and Management. So it's the Professional Practice in Leadership and Management, and that's a level 6 qualification. So you will come and do the apprenticeship and also gain that qualification at the same time. The other qualification that you'll also have the opportunity to apply for at the end of your programme is the CMI, the Chartered Manager Institute, level 5 in Leadership and Management, and then you can apply for Chartered Manager status, and you'll be able to put all those lovely letters after your name. Now, just because there's 4 things in front of you doesn't mean that you have to complete 4 pieces of work. All of these are interrelated, interlinked, and so you do 1 piece of work for each of the modules, if you like, and provide your evidence and your portfolio of evidence, and it will map to all of those programs so that you'll go out with all of those qualifications if you're successful on this program. Thank you, Taz, if you want to move on. So I've seen a few comments in the chat box, and I just want to respond to one of them, because I noticed, Solomon, you put from Tanzania. You do have to be working within the United Kingdom, within England, within the United Kingdom for 50% of your time. Otherwise, you won't qualify for the funding that goes with this program. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about funding later on, but I just wanted to get that one out there first before I move on. Okay, so the rules kind of is 80-20. So you are required to do that off-the-job training, and that off-the-job training is approximately 20% of your working hours if you work 30 hours or more, which again is the requirements for coming on a program such as this. It's 6 hours minimum that the employer has to provide each apprentice in order for them to be able to conduct their off-the-job training, which they then can apply to their on-the-job role within the organisation. And the 80% then is where you take the training and you work with your employer. So the employer will provide a work-based mentor who will work with you so that you can develop those knowledge, skills and behaviours. The whole point of the programme is to give you some form of development and movement in the area of leadership and management. And if you're not able to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviours, then you won't be able to complete the programme successfully. So what we do as an organisation is we work together with the employer and with the apprentice, and to create a bespoke training plan so that it's individualized to you and what you need as an employer and what you need as an apprentice, and and make sure that everybody is able to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviors. I will get back to those questions, guys. We'll jump to them at the end. Okay. Taz, do you want to move on? Okay, so activities then that can be contained in the 20% off the job training, and this list is not exhaustive, but just to give you a few examples, it could be some work shadowing, it could be your off-the-job training. It could be part of your taught sessions, your lectures, your webinars, your workshops. We might give you some simulated exercises and some role play. It could be some industry visits. It could be that shadowing. It could be attendance at some form of conference, some online learning that we might have given you to do or something, but it has to be applied to those standards. And so everything that we do and everything that we provide for you will be directed towards those standards, and then you can use that as evidence towards your off-the-job training. Thank you, Taj. Do you want to move that on? So our learning and delivery method on this particular program is, again, we collaborate with the employer and we also collaborate with the apprentice to make sure it's the right method for you. But ideally, we like to do it as blended learning. We prefer you to come on site for some of the delivery of the off-the-job training because it's nice to get away from the workplace, and it's also really nice to join different apprentices within your cohort so that you can discuss across things that happen within different organisations, because it can help develop that knowledge, skills and behaviours further, but also gives you the opportunity to really concentrate on the programme. So we recommend that you come on site for the induction of the programme, and also for the start of each of the modules. There will be a one-day on-site delivery of that module, and then the rest is generally done via live webinars, tutorials, etc. However, there is an opportunity to do this online, but again, it has to be live online. So you have to join the webinars live. It can't just be watching the webinars at a later date. It has to be that engagement for us to meet the compliance rules of our ESFA, which is the Education and Skills Funds Agency, in order to meet the requirements of that levy funding. On top of that, you will then be provided with what we call a portfolio support tutor, and the portfolio support tutor is the person that will support you throughout the evidence gathering within your portfolio of evidence, and we use a system called OneFile. So it's very much like a filing system, and we can use that system in order to monitor progress, and also for you to upload your evidence too. And then that system is used again at the end by our independent assessors, who will assess the evidence and ensure that you've met the requirements of the standard to pass the programme. You'll also then be given module tutors. So each of your modules for the programme will have individual module tutors, and they will be there to support and guide you to complete the module. And Andrew's going to talk about those modules a little bit later. And also you'll have your programme leader, which is Andrew, and Andrew's there if you need any support or guidance on your programme as a whole, or anything that you might require, then Andrew's also there for you. And then on top of that, you've got me. So if you then, need somebody else to support you, then you've got me as well. And we also have a very dedicated professional services team. So you've got Taz, who's in the webinar with us today, but also we've got a whole team of people behind the scenes that deal with all kinds of things to do with your enrolment, payments, contracts, training plans, and all those kind of things. So we've got a whole host of people to support you, and we've also got our online resources. So we've also got our study skills and our library services, and you would also become a student of the University of Lincoln, so you have access to all school learning activities. You can join the union, you can come and join in some of the union activities, you can do all of those things as well, because it all comes as part of the package. Thank you, Taz. And again, I will get to those questions, guys. So we've had quite a lot of success. I mean, we've had 100% success on this particular program, on all of our apprenticeship programs within the business school so far. And we've been running these programs for around 7 years, 8 years now. And we've had 100% of our apprentices have completed their program successfully. So for those apprentices that remained on the program, they have completed successfully and gone off to do wonderful things. And there's some examples there in front of you. We've had some fantastic apprentices that have had the opportunity to work on some big projects for their workplace, but also those smaller projects are just as important and just as equally successful when it comes to that endpoint assessment. So we've had quite a lot of success with our apprentices, and we're very proud of what our apprentices have achieved, and their employers have always been very proud of what they've achieved. Next slide, please, Taz. And this is the last slide for me, then I'm going to pass over to my colleague. So the next bit I want to talk to you about is a little bit about the apprentice journey. So you can hopefully see that slide in front of you. We have, as I said, a dedicated professional services team that will take care of the enrolment process, and either we identify our apprentice through recruitment or staff progression by the employer, or that apprentice has come through to us from a session such as this. And again, Taz will give you those details at the end of the session, but if you have any further questions or you want to have a chat with me or Andrew to discuss further, then please do get in touch. So you'll do that first. And then you'll also have an interview with your employer and the apprentice. Both need to be present at that, because we need to make sure that we're putting you on the right program for you as the employer, but also the right program for you as the apprentice. So we have to make sure that we are putting you where you are meant to be, and you have the opportunity to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviours. Once the enrolment process has been done, it's quite a lengthy process because there is a lot of compliance within there, but again, we can support you with that. You will then come in for an induction. And that induction will cover 2.5 days. And the first day is generally with myself and Andrew, and we will talk over the programme because there's a lot of information, but we'll keep giving you that information. And then the second day is the start of your very first module. And the third day on the morning, we will ask the work-based mentors or a representative from the employer to come in as well. And we'll talk about what it means to be a work-based mentor. So we don't just look after our apprentices, we also look after our employers and make sure that our employers are happy and understand what their role within the programme is, and offer them training and guidance if required. Part of the requirements, and again I think this might come a little bit later, so I might jump in the gun, but part of the requirements is you must have a level 2 functional skills maths and English qualification or GCSE in old money grade C or above, or new money grade 4 or above, or equivalent from wherever you are within the UK or across the globe. So you have to have that functional skills level 2. Otherwise you cannot pass this programme. We cannot take you to Gateway in order to do the endpoint assessment. So that is part of the requirement. But also we will do some functional skills testing with you, and that's not to catch you out, it's just to see where you're at. You know, if you've not been in education for a long time, then we can offer more support and guidance in those areas where required. So we have a really extensive study skills support system at the university, which is fantastic to access. Once you've gone through all that enrolment and that induction, then you'll start your learning. You'll have access to our Blackboard system, which is our virtual learning environment, and our OneFile system, which is our portfolio virtual learning environment, and that will have all kinds of information on there for you. You'll have regular catch-ups with your assessor, with your portfolio support tutor. You'll have that remote and face-to-face teaching. You'll be required to do that 20% off the job training, and you'll also have the opportunity then to develop those skills within the workplace. And you'll also be provided with monthly reviews to see where you're up to, and then quarterly reviews with your employer to ensure that, you know, we are doing everything we can to support you and help you catch up if you've got a little bit behind, or if you want to get a little bit ahead, well, then we can discuss that as well. So those catch-ups are always really, really useful. Once you've done all of the parts on the programme, and again Andrew will talk about that in just a little while, but once you've completed all those elements of the programme and your portfolio of evidence is ready, you will then be able to enter what we call the Gateway period. And the Gateway period is where we have a discussion between you, the employer, the apprentice, sorry, you as the apprentice or you as the employer, together with others, the training provider, and we sign off that portfolio of evidence and say you're ready to go to your endpoint assessment. Once you then get to your endpoint assessment, there's several elements to that, and again, a lot of information today, but we will go through this with you in detail. You will be expected to provide a submission of a portfolio of evidence, and you'll also be expected to provide a work-based project and conduct a presentation and have what we call an interview or a professional discussion, if you like, within that endpoint assessment in order to complete the whole of the apprenticeship programme. And I think that's me done for this part, but I think I'm coming back in again in a little while, and I will answer those questions at the end, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague Andrew, who's going to talk you through the programme.
Thank you, Karen. So the modules you see in front of you now, this is the degree aspect of the degree apprenticeship, and these will be the modules you will study over the 3-year period. The content and the learning outcomes of each module has been closely mapped to the standard. Therefore, they interlink very nicely. And also, as your knowledge, experience develop over the period of the apprenticeship, so the expectations of the academic side will also develop alongside that as well. So as an example, we start off with the personal effectiveness for leadership, and this is the module where you start looking at yourself and the roles of leaders and managers, etc., and accepting that we have recruits straight into the apprenticeship from education, and we also have apprentices join us who may well have been out of formal education for some time. This is where we bring everybody up to that balance of knowledge, skills and behaviours expectation for all of the apprenticeship, and we start introducing the aspects of academic writing, academic study, research, etc. So sets a very, very good sound baseline for people to develop as the programme goes along. So the first 4 modules equate to a level 4 in the degree pathway. And then we move into the second year of level 5. And as an example of how you're developing from your knowledge, skills and behaviours point of view, if we take, for example, project management and professional practice, what we'll be looking at this time is for you, alongside your organisation, to undertake a project within the organisation. And the idea with this is it exemplifies how the academic work that you're doing and the apprenticeship that you're following will also benefit the organisation. So there will be recommendations, there will be actions that come out of this project that will benefit your organisation. And that sort of shows how closely aligned everything is within the whole process. So for the final year, where we have the 3 modules, this equates to the level 6, the bachelor's level of the degree apprenticeship. And it culminates in the capstone module, which is negotiated work-based project. So a similar approach to the project management and professional practice, but within this final module, you will be expected to undertake some research and again, complete something that has recommendations to benefit your organisation. And the topics that can be chosen are almost endless, but they're always done in negotiation with, first off, your tutor for the module. So we know that the projects that you're looking at can achieve the academic standards required. The workplace mentor will also be involved as well to make sure that it's realistic for your organisation. And it does culminate in bringing together all of the aspects of the previous modules into final capstone modules to demonstrate the development of your behaviour, skills and knowledge over the 3-year period. For each of the modules, there will be learning outcomes which you will need to be achieving in order to progress through to the next stage. And there's a number of different assessments that we use, and these could be written assessments, they can be presentations, or a combination. And again, these reflect how you might be doing business, how you might be presenting topics to your organisation. So we strongly encourage you to use your organisational paperwork, your organisational processes, and indeed down to your organisational PowerPoint slides, if there are some, in order to mirror what you would do on a day-to-day basis and for us to align the academic aspect to that. So this is a 10-week for each of the modules. The final negotiated work-based project is slightly longer because of the extra work involved. But on completion of this and going through the processes within the university, we can then confirm your bachelor's degree at the end of this process. That's me for the time being, but I'll be very happy to answer any further questions you may have on the degree aspect of the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship a little later on.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so a little bit about assessment. So for assessment, then we take what's called a portfolio approach, because you're going to be developing a portfolio of evidence across the whole of those 3 years of the degree apprenticeship. So within each of those assessments, we have mapped and aligned them very, very closely from the degree learning outcomes to the standards of the apprenticeship. So as I said right at the very beginning, you only do each piece of work once and provide that evidence in order to be able to then complete both your degree and your apprenticeship and those other qualifications that come within this program from the CMI. So each of those assessments will have a theoretical part, they'll have a practical part, with the evidence and a reflection in there as well, because the whole point of doing an apprenticeship is to demonstrate how you have developed those knowledge, skills and behaviours, and the best way to do that, in our opinion, is through self-assessment and through reflection. So they are in there in order for you to be able to then demonstrate those knowledge and skills and then those behaviours within each of those assessments. So they are very tightly mapped. We also provide an opportunity for what's called formative assessment. So formative assessment is where us as a delivery team will provide you with opportunities to present us with your portfolios, your evidence, your assignments, and we will give you feedback on that in order for you to go away and then make any relevant changes if necessary, or add any additional evidence where required. So you'll have those from your module tutors from the degree part of the programme, but also you'll be given your portfolio support tutor, who will also provide you with feedback on your portfolio of evidence for the apprenticeship, and whether or not there's any gaps in there, and whether or not you need to strengthen the evidence within there to give you the best possible outcome at the end of your programme, so you can get the grades that you are looking for. At the end of each module, there will be a summative assessment, which is that portfolio containing that theory, practice, evidence and reflection. And that will be marked as per all our other undergraduate programmes or postgraduate programmes in the same way, by a first marker and then a moderator. And we'll also have an external examiner who will also audit that assessment in line with the University of Lincoln's policies on marking and assessment. And you will then be provided with the grade for that. And after each set point within the programme, you'll go to an exam board so that you can then have those awards within your transcript, and you're able to then progress onto the next stage of the programme. At the end of each of those 11 modules, those 10 modules, and then as Andrew said, you've got that final module at the very end, which is that work-based project. There's 3 quite distinct elements to the work-based project, and the work-based project is really useful because it's the one that you have to negotiate with us as the training provider, but also between the apprentice and the employer, and that final project will form, or part of it will form, your endpoint assessment requirements. So it's a really important project, and the 3 distinct elements are a business case to give a rationale and justification of what you're doing and why you're doing it and the impact of doing such a project. The actual project report itself, you know, what you did, what happened, what were the challenges, those kind of things. And then there's also a presentation, and that project report, part of that report and the presentation will be then mirrored and used within the endpoint assessment, or parts of it will be used within the endpoint assessment. Thank you, Taz. Have I got the next? Oh, and then you get to graduate, which is fantastic. And the reason it's so fantastic is because our graduation takes place in the University of Lincoln, takes place near the University of Lincoln, which is at Lincoln Cathedral, which is one of the most beautiful historical buildings, I would say, in the United Kingdom and in the world. And it has so much ancient history. It is absolutely stunning, if not a little cold, but it's really lovely to graduate in there. We do our graduation for you as the apprentice and your families, and we also invite our employers to come to us as VIP guests so they can see their apprentices graduate. And then once a year during National Apprenticeship Week, which is always in February, usually the sort of second week in February, we have what's called a success event. And that success event is aimed at the apprentices and the employers only. And that's to celebrate the success of our apprentices. So you can see some photos there on the screen in front of you. Thank you, Taz.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. Right. So at this stage of the information webinar, this is the point where you get a chance to sort of listen to somebody who's sort of been through it all and gone through that experience. And this time we've got our guest is Michael Hoyle from the University of Lincoln. He's been an apprentice, or is a current existing apprentice on the CMDA at the moment. So I'd like to sort of bring him up and introduce him to everybody. So Michael, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me along to come and talk about my experience on the program itself.
No, it's of great value to our listeners for sure. So why don't you sort of start off, Michael, by sort of giving us a bit of background to who you are and your sort of work and role?
So I went straight into the workplace at the age of 17. So I finished I finished a BTEC, so a very practical vocational course, and moved into the workplace. And I started working in theatre, working backstage in what I call stage management roles, so running events, managing events. And if I do say so myself, I became very good at being able to do that and facilitate and manage projects. And then in 2012, I had the opportunity to move to the University of Lincoln in the role of technical manager at the then Lincoln Performing Arts Centre. And that was really my first taste of line managing people and managing budgets and finances and running larger scale projects and running a team. And I believe I did a good job of that, but I would very much put myself in the category of an accidental manager. I became very good at the work that I did, to the point where I became a manager of the work that I did and managed teams. So from that point in 2012, essentially I was an accidental manager, technical manager of a department, managing finances, managing people, and managing budgets. And then I found out about the CMDA program. I'd say in my mid 20s to late 20s, I developed a real interest in business and management. Probably through the work that I was doing, but I found a real interest in that, and I found myself reading a lot of literature around business, leadership and management, and entrepreneurship as well. So when this opportunity came up, it sparked an interest, and I did exactly what these potential applicants are doing now, and went to a talk and found out a little bit more about the program. And it seemed like a really logical choice for me in my career at that stage, being a middle manager, having a team, but really not necessarily having the training to be a manager.
Of course, no, absolutely, and what better way to sort of formalize, obviously, your experience, through this particular apprenticeship as well. So, and that's obviously where the knowledge, skills, and behaviours, you get to learn, the sort of the standard, if you like, and applying and comparing against what you already know. So how did you find, in terms of your experience on the course itself, in terms of things like teaching and support, how was it for you?
So my experience of the CMDA hasn't maybe been the typical experience of starting and finishing. I've had a series of personal issues. My family member, my wife, had some health issues, so I was required to take an interruption at one point. And the staff throughout that experience, the staff were fantastic. The admin staff as well were absolutely brilliant at kind of guiding me through that experience. And really, for me at that time, it was the difference between continuing the course or not. And through being able to take that interruption and get the support and guidance I needed, especially really when I came back onto the course, that was 5-star. That was I couldn't have asked for more really from the staff and the guidance and support that I received then. But other than that, the modules are really logically laid out, and from the moment you start the course, I could find that I was applying everything that I was learning in those modules and in the independent research to my role and what I was doing. So there's a lot of self-reflection in the first module around personal effectiveness for leadership, and then you move into managing and developing people as a module. And to take the information and be able to apply that to the people that I managed really was quite transformational, but also to be able to use that experience and that knowledge and practice those behaviors, and maybe understand some of the pressures my management were also under at the same time. And again, be able to apply that to the workplace was really brilliant. And that's been the case throughout the modules. I mentioned before that I'm very entrepreneurial. As I progressed through into level 3, I learned more about organizational strategy and entrepreneurship initiatives. And that really, again, sparked an interest with me. And I managed to kind of steer my entire third year experience towards how I could kind of express my entrepreneurial side through my workplace. So I was learning about the topic of entrepreneurship, and then in my 80%, I was then applying that to my role. And that's been hugely influential for me. It's allowed me some real opportunities for success. In doing that, my final project was to launch a company through the University of Lincoln, an events company. So really bringing together everything that I'd learned on the degree so far to form an events company called StageLink, in which I've spearheaded through that entrepreneurship initiative, and I've launched, and that so far has generated in excess of £200,000 in income for the university through that activity. Alongside that, it's given me confidence in internal and external networking, how to manage stakeholder relationships. A lot of this I maybe did anyway, but without consciously knowing the strategies to do it effectively or really think about that. So being able to study the CMDA content module by module and then actually go about applying that in my 80% was really beneficial to me, and has allowed me actually to experience 2 promotions or 2 job changes within my time studying. So the first one was to move from technical manager to program leader for a brand new technical theatre degree program, which again I proposed and then I led for the first 3 years. And then more recently to Director of Professional Practice and Enterprise for the School of Creative Arts. So essentially that is taking that kind of entrepreneurship initiative and allowing me to manage or to direct our team members in generating external income for the university, for the school. I look back now and I wonder if I would be able to do roles like that maybe without this experience. And I'd imagine not. I think if anything, it's given me that kind of knowledge, skills and behaviors to be able to kind of deliver projects like that. And if anything, it's given me the confidence to be able to do that as well.
Yeah,
yes, it's kind of a brief outline of where I'm up to.
Yeah, no, it sounds fantastic, and you make a really good point at the beginning there, Michael, in regards to sort of that flexibility, enabling you, sort of when times are maybe a bit tough and you need to sort of interrupt learning, and to be able to sort of get back on track, and that's one of the sort of the beauty of the apprenticeship. It allows you that flexibility. It allows you to sort of accommodate people's lives, if you like, and take that into consideration as part of the sort of the learning journey as well there. And yeah, your journey sounds amazing in terms of sort of going from where you are to now, and applying what you've sort of learned throughout the degree, as we say, sort of putting that into practice, and as a result forming a company and off the back of it, which is fantastic there. So and I think you kind of answered my next question really, which is about sort of personal development really, and I suspect it's sort of very much linked to sort of forming that company really.
Yeah, I think personal development is a topic that I've always been interested in, or from my mid-20s. Having that embedded within the structure of the course forces you to engage in personal development activities, so formal personal development activities, but you are developing throughout the entire course. I think it's hugely beneficial for that. For me, my journey across those 3 years of modules hasn't been easy. I think it takes a lot of work to get to the finish line, and I think anyone that's interested in this course needs to know that there is a lot of work to do, but it's hugely rewarding and really beneficial to anyone interested in doing that. As I mentioned, my experience had some interruptions. I had some issues along the way, but through the support of the admin staff and the teaching staff, the lecturers, they've got me back on track to help me with that. I've also mentored somebody as an employer on the CMDA. I instantly saw the benefits. Surprisingly, they actually overtook me because I took my interruption, but quickly after starting the CMDA, I recommended it to a colleague of mine, somebody that I managed, and then I acted as their mentor. And we have very different roles. A lot of my work is very project based, where I have really intense periods for maybe a month or 2 months at a time, whereas my colleague has less of that, and it was easier for that colleague to put in place their 1 day a week, their 20% every week. So for example, their Thursday might be their CMDA day, and I could support that as a manager. If I was to give anyone advice, I would suggest you try and formalize that, try and make that kind of ring fence that 20% time, that is your time for your CMDA. Ideally 1 day a week to go and do the work that you need to do on your CMDA, and then be able to kind of input that into the rest of your working week. For me, it was more of a case of I would work an intense project and then have to allocate maybe 3 or 4 days in one go to catch up on that time. So that was maybe a little bit more challenging, but I've managed to make it work. That's not been an issue. It's finding a learning plan that works for you and your situation, really. But yeah, time management, planning, and really making sure if anyone listening is interested in and follows through and wants to do the apprenticeship, make sure that you keep a really good, strong relationship with your mentor, with your tutors, making sure that you're talking to them about any situations as they come up, because I think having that communication, if I could go back and do everything again, I would really work on just making sure I'm really open and honest, and talking to my mentors and my tutors from the very instant that something arises, and just make sure you keep that relationship as strong as it can be. But yeah, the teaching staff have been fantastic throughout.
That's great advice, Michael. Absolutely. I think sort of, in that sense, and also, highlighting that sort of time management planning element as well. Clearly you're a busy man and you've got a lot on your plate, and trying to sort of juggle sort of the apprenticeship alongside that, is not easy. And that's a good point to make to our sort of viewers as well, to our listeners, in that sense that, this isn't, it's not easy in that sense, and there are challenges along the way, and I think that's part of the learning in itself, that part of that experience, and how you overcome those challenges, because no doubt those sort of things reflect real life in the work environment as well. So that's really good. That's really good. And for our sort of audience, really, again, if you've got any questions for Michael, please pop them in the chat. And like I said, those that are sort of listening on catch up, again, feel free to email us, and we can get Michael to respond to you with anything specific there as well. But I want to thank Michael for his time, and we'll sort of pop you back on the end in case there's any other questions then, Michael. But thank you very much for that insight there. That's brilliant. Right, so I'm going to bring back on Karen now, who will sort of carry on and talk about sort of some of the requirements around the CMDA.
Thanks, Taz, and thank you, Michael. We're very proud and honoured to be part of your journey, as we are all our apprentices. So just a little bit then on CMDA requirements. So part of the requirements, as I said before, are because we have compliance with the Education and Skills Agency within England. So we have to complete a series of paperwork. So it is a bit of a lengthy application pack, if you like, but it's meant to be something that's done between all three of us. So that's the employer, the training provider, and the apprentice. And part of that is what we call a commitment statement and a training plan. So the commitment statement is part of the contract, which is between the universities, the training provider, and the employer. And then the training plan is what kind of off-the-job training will be conducted by us as the training provider, and then how will the employer utilize the things that are going to be learned on the program within the workplace, so that that apprentice has the maximum opportunity to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviors. There's also the apprenticeship agreement. All of these things have to be signed, and we have to make sure then that the compliance part of that is around those hours. So it's 6 hours minimum of off-the-job training, or we tend to refer to it as 20% because it's around 20%. If you are in a role that works less than 30 hours, there is still an opportunity to do this apprenticeship program, but we would have to work on a different formula, if you like, in terms of what that off-the-job training percentage would look like. But for anybody that's working 30 hours or more, it's 6 hours minimum, or it is 20% roughly of off-the-job training. And that has to be part of that contractual agreement, that apprenticeship agreement, that training plan, and that commitment statement. We also have what's called an individual learner record, or an ILR, and that ILR will then have all of the details of the organisation, the apprentice's start date, the apprentice's expected end date, and that compliance is also those quarterly reviews with the employer and the apprentice and the training provider, and progression reviews just to make sure that you're on track, and obviously then that claim at the end when you have completed your programme of study. So it's a tripartite agreement between the training provider, between the employer, and between the apprentice. And the employer part of it is that they are expected to provide a work-based mentor who can be your current line manager, and ideally in the same department, but it doesn't have to be. It can be from a different department, as long as you have somebody that will give you those opportunities to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So if you're only doing what you do in your normal role, then are you really developing as a leader and a manager? So the idea is to give you opportunities to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviours in areas where you potentially haven't had the opportunity to do that in the past, so that you can then progress into a more senior management role, potentially going forward. And then obviously that portfolio of evidence, which you will get that support through to the endpoint assessment. Thank you, Taz. So the eligibility and application process, and I think this might answer some of the questions that are in the chat already. You have to be employed. You find your own employment. We don't find employment for you. We can help employers in the employer an apprentice scheme. But as an individual, if you are on the on the session at the moment watching as an individual who's interested in the program, then you need to be employed and you need to go to your employer, and then we can take it from there if your employer is interested in putting you through the apprenticeship program. So for this particular standard, you have to already be in employment, or you have to find your own place of employment for the duration of the apprenticeship program. Happy again to talk about that further if you would like some more information. You have to work in England or Wales for 50% of your working week. So you have to be working within England or Wales. It doesn't, if you work in Scotland or Ireland, then you're not eligible. If you work mostly overseas, then you're not eligible for the funding, and therefore you have to be working within England or Wales. You have to have a relevant work role. So remember that skill scan at the beginning that I talked about, that conversation about making sure that you're on the right course and you're in the right place to develop your knowledge, skills and behaviours for this particular standard. We don't necessarily want to turn anybody away, but we want to make sure that you're at the right level, you're in the right role, you're not in a role that potentially you might want to do and look at something a bit more senior, or you might want to look at something that's maybe a little bit more junior and then work up to this one. And I did notice a question in the chat, so I am just going to cut to the chat before I answer that. What about if it's targeted at people aiming for middle management, would it suit an existing middle manager that is on track for senior management? If that's the case, then Joe, then I would recommend that you perhaps come and have a chat with us, because we do have a senior leader apprenticeship program as well. And it might be that you are ready to move to the more senior role rather than this particular standard. So happy to have a chat about that later on. Or if you want to send an email through, then we can have a chat about that one. You have to have English and Maths level 2, as I said before, GCSE or equivalent. So that's functional skills, English and Maths, or GCSE grade C if you're a little bit older like I am, or it's a or even O levels at grade C, or it is a grade 4 or above in the new version of the GCSE qualification. We can support you to complete Maths and English. My recommendation is, and I'm sure Michael would agree with me, if you don't have your English and Maths or you don't have access to them, or you did them a long time ago, then those courses tend to be free within England. So you are able to go along to your local college and complete that program for free. And I would always recommend you go and do that anyway, because otherwise it might hold you up in what you want to do going forward. You have to be in some form of leadership role, or, as I said, be an aspiring manager to do this particular standard. If you are looking at that senior level, then you need to be in a management role, middle manager role, for at least 2 years to be able to qualify to come onto the senior leaders apprenticeship program. But if you wanted to come onto the chartered manager one, then that's a team leader, or the opportunity to be an interim team leader, or have access to those kind of supervisory roles. So some kind of middle manager supervisory role, anything that's about that level, this is the right program for you. And as I said, that's 30 hours a week employment contract. So the application process is, first of all, if you want to send us through an email, we can send out an application pack. As I said, we can have a chat on Teams if you wanted to, or via telephone, whatever way is most appropriate for you. Or Andrew will have that conversation with you and we'll have a chat first. Or our team will send out an application form for you and for your employer to complete. We recommend that if you're going to apply, you've spoken to your employer if you are an individual, or if you're an employer and you want further guidance, again, come through to us. We're happy to have that conversation with you and help you through that process too. And then once the potential apprentice has been identified, it's always advisable to try and complete a lot of the application pack together, because it just makes that tripartite relationship start straight away. But there are parts, obviously, that as an individual you can complete in advance. And that application process includes an application form which will ask you for a statement of intent, reasons why you want to do the program, etc., what you're hoping to get out of it. The skills scan, which is not a test and it's not aimed at trying to catch you out, but the skills scan is there to have a look at where you are already in terms of the elements of the standard. So, for example, do you already have some marketing skills and experience? Are you a project manager already? Because potentially there might be areas within the program that you don't need to complete. And we call that the APEL process, which is accreditation of prior or experiential learning. And therefore, you might be able to do the program without having to do that aspect of it, because you do it on a daily basis. There's also that academic interview, which will be the apprentice, the employer, and the University of Lincoln, in order to determine whether this is the right program for you. And then obviously we have to then do all the contractual parts to ensure that we are being compliant with ESFA regulations and documents. Thank you, Taz.
No problem. Thank you very much, Karen. And so really lastly, just to go through, as to reiterate really what sort of Karen was saying around application packs, please email us if you want to sort of pursue this and want more information at cmda@lincoln.ac.uk. And as you saw just earlier there, application packs need to be returned to this email address by the 5th of February for a March start, and the March cohort starts on the 5th of March there. But first of all, have a think, for sure, have a chat with your employer, because they're the ones that ultimately have to approve this and put you onto the apprenticeship. And of course, ask questions, contact us, and we're happy to sort of clarify anything that you need. Now, I'm just going to bring the rest of my sort of colleagues back on, and Michael as well, and just going to have a quick scan through, see if there's any questions there that we might want to answer. There's one from Imtaz, and he's talking about sort of, can we get admissions after we graduated in 2023?
Do you want me to answer that, Taz?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely, you can, but you have to still obviously meet the other requirements, as I've already stated. So you have to have employment. There are plenty of employers that do offer graduate places where you can apply for an apprenticeship with them. There's plenty of employers, if you have a good look, and you know, they may take you on as an apprentice, as their organization, and then enable you to do this program at the same time. So there are employers that do that. Or if you have a job already, you could go to your employer and say, I've graduated or I'm about to graduate, and I'd really like to get on the management trail. Do you have a program or an opportunity for me? And then we can have that chat as well. So as long as you're within the compliance rules, that you are living and working within England or Wales, and you have lined up some placement and your employer is happy to support you, then absolutely you can come and get admission. We offer admission points in March and in October. So if you aren't ready for joining us in the March cohort, then you can potentially apply to come into our October cohort, or the following March in 2025. So yeah. And I've just seen there's a very similar question on that, but it's talking about if you've got a degree already in an MBA, if it's a master's, and forgive me, I'm not sure I can pronounce your name, so I do apologize. But if you do already have an MBA, then I would suggest this is probably not the apprenticeship for you, because you already have the qualification that exists within both of our standards within the business school here at the university. That doesn't mean that you might not be interested in another course or apprenticeship that would complement your MBA in another area. So it might be that you're looking at maybe doing a doctorate, and there's plenty of scholarships and doctorates out there that you can apply for. Or there might be an employer out there that would be interested in you completing one. For example, because we are the business school, we do get NHS staff members that are doctors, that have their doctor training and doctor qualifications, but then they need a management qualification, so they'll come to us for that part of it. So it might be that you might want to specialise in engineering or something like that, and there's plenty of apprenticeships in engineering and other industries and other areas that you can go for.
Great, thank you, Karen. And we just got a question just popped in at the chat at the bottom, so I'm just going to put that on screen for you to have a look.
Okay, and just to say thank you, Joe. Yes, please do. Happy to have a chat, Joe, about the senior leaders. That might be more appropriate for you. So, Louisa, do I need to gain functional skills level 2 separate qualification? We can provide it, Louisa. We do have a team here that can support you to get that functional skills qualification. I'll be honest with you, I got my qualifications quite a few moons ago, and we didn't have. It was during a period where the UK was going through a change in qualifications, so I couldn't find my certificate for maths, so I had to go and do it again. And it's a nightmare having to go back and do that when you think you've already done it once. But there's plenty of people that potentially didn't get this at school, and it's okay, because we'll take that into consideration with your full interview and academic pack and your application pack. So, for example, if your employer is really supporting you and wanting you to get onto this program, and you have the other qualifications to come through, or the entry requirements, and you're in a management role or a supervisory role, then we can support you with that functional skills. My only advice is, if you are interested in coming on the program and you are going to apply, go and investigate maths and English now, or let us know, so that we can get we have some contacts here at the university that we can provide you details of, in order for you to then start those functional skills straight away. And the only reason I'm saying that is because when you get on the apprenticeship, as Michael will definitely, I'm sure Michael will nod his head in a minute, tell you it's quite intensive and there's a lot to do and a lot to think about. And if you're having to then do functional skills at the same time, then you might feel like it's quite a lot of work. So I would suggest that you absolutely start thinking about those functional skills straight away, and we can provide guidance with that. So if you just ping us an email on cmda@lincoln.ac.uk.
Great, thank you very much, Karen. And I don't think there's anything else in the chat at the moment for sort of Michael or Andrew at the moment. So yeah, I think we'll start to, I guess, sort of wrap it up. So yes, if you are sort of on the chat and you are an employer, please get in touch. If you are an individual, then please have a chat with your employer and talk to them about this opportunity. And just as I sort of say that, I think there's something else. Oh, as a thank you from Louisa there. That's great. And yeah, I think it just leaves just saying thank you very much for sort of joining us today at today's information webinar. And thank you to Michael for joining us and giving his sort of experience and insight into his journey on the degree apprenticeship as well. So yes, and thank you for the rest of the panel, Andrew and Karen, all sort of taking us through this there.
Thank you, Taz.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.